Now, at the time that these books were released, I was teaching in the religious studies department of a Christian liberal arts college. And I began to wonder how much Christian students have been infected by the relativistic attitude that Bloom described. How would my own students fare on one of E.D. Hirsch's tests? Well, how would they, I thought? Why not give them a quiz? And so I did. I drew up a general knowledge quiz over famous people, places, and events, and administered it to 2 classes of about 50 sophomores. And what I discovered was, although they did better than the general student population, nevertheless, there were still sizable portions of the group that could not identify, even with a phrase, some very famous people and events. For example, 49% could not identify Leo Tolstoy, the author of perhaps the world's greatest novel, War and Peace. To my surprise, 16% did not know who Winston Churchill was. One student identified him as one of the founding fathers of America. Another one identified him as a great revival preacher of a few hundred years ago. 22% could not identify Afghanistan. 20% did not know where the Amazon River is. A whopping 67% could not identify the Battle of the Bulge. Many of them identified it as a dieter's problem. So it became clear to me that Christian students have not been able to rise above the dark undertow in our educational system at the primary and secondary levels. But then an even more terrible fear began to dawn upon me as I contemplated these statistics. If Christian students are this ignorant of the general facts of history and geography, then the chances are that they and Christians in general are equally or even more ignorant of the facts concerning our own Christian heritage and doctrine. Our culture in general has sunk to a level of biblical and theological illiteracy. A great many, if not most people, cannot even name the 4 Gospels. In one recent survey, one person identified them as Matthew, Mark, and Luther. In another survey, several people identified Joan of Arc as Noah's wife. And I suspect that the evangelical church is probably caught somewhere higher up in this same downward spiral. Charles Malik, who was the Lebanese ambassador to the United States, in his address at the Billy Graham Center in Wheaton, Illinois, emphasized that as Christians, we face 2 tasks in our evangelism: winning the soul and winning the mind. That is to say, not only converting people spiritually, but converting them intellectually as well. And the church, he warned, is lagging dangerously behind with respect to this second task. Mark his words well. I must be frank with you. The greatest danger confronting American evangelical Christianity is the danger of anti-intellectualism. The mind in its greatest and deepest reaches is not cared for enough. The result is that the arena of creative thinking is vacated and abdicated to the enemy. For the sake of greater effectiveness in witnessing to Jesus Christ himself, as well as for their own sakes, evangelicals cannot afford to keep on living on the periphery of responsible intellectual existence. Our churches are filled with Christians whose minds are idling in intellectual neutral. They may be spiritually born again, but they still think like non-Christians. As Christians, their minds are going to waste. Now, sometimes people will say that they just prefer having a simple faith. But here I think we must distinguish between a childlike faith and a childish faith. A childlike faith is a whole-souled trust in God as our Heavenly Father. And Jesus commends such a childlike faith to us. But a childish faith is an immature, unreflective faith. And such a faith is not commended to us. On the contrary, Paul says, do not be children in your thinking. In evil, be like infants, but in thinking, be mature. 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 20. If a simple faith means an unreflective, ignorant faith, then we should want none of it, brothers and sisters. The Christian faith is not an apathetic faith, a brain-dead faith. Rather, it is a living, active, and inquiring faith. As St. Anselm put it, ours is a faith that seeks understanding. So today, as we begin a new year, I want to issue a challenge to all of us to become intellectually engaged as Christians. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean learning what we as Christians believe and being able to explain to people why we believe it.